welcome to this week's podcast. I've got two emails here. One of them is from a fellow by the name of Gene. Actually, this guy sent me a whole slew of DVDs. He sent me almost 20 hours of video. And this email here, I'm not going to go into detail on this email because it's really rather kind of long. But what I want to do is I want to cover the subjects of what he asked me on this video, and they were regarding impressioning. And without actually reading the email to you, the questions were, on your impressioning video, you show us to use the flat file position when starting to impression, and on this other video that we saw, it shows a knife edge. And what is the difference between the two, and why do you think that the flat file actually is much better than the knife edge? So best way for me to do that is to actually show you in the shop. The next email isn't actually a question because I actually helped this guy on the phone, but it was something I thought that you guys really needed to see. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back in the shop, and I'm actually going to answer these emails, in front of you, so you can actually see it and understand it a little bit better. But before that, I actually want to show you the inside of this van. And I've had questions about, phones and maps and finding our locations and stuff. And I think this next part of this video will be very interesting. Let's take a look at it. I'm going to have to move this camera so you can actually see down inside the van. Okay, I've moved the camera a little bit so we can get a little bit better shot of this area. We're going to talk today in this podcast a little bit about the way our van is set up, the way that I set it up that really works best for me. The hardest thing for me is being able to look addresses up, actually in a map, and actually being able to read the map. What I use is I have on my cell phone, we have hotspots. To where, in other words, I have internet connection within my van. To kind of give you an idea, we've got 3 calls here to run that I have to run today. I write all of my call slips out like this, and then at the bottom I always put the date. And these call slips go along with our ticket in our ticket books, to where, let's say you have to go back on a job. But let me start out by showing you how I would find this address at 3906 South Jones. I go to my tablet, I go to my MapQuest, and just click on it, and I go 3806 South Jones. And there it is. That's where we need to go today. You can move it in, move it out. It's just a really neat way to be able to find addresses. The other good thing that I like about this is because it saves where I've been. In other words, when I click here or go down to some of these, it shows all the other addresses and things of places that I've been. So usually if you have to go back on a job, let's say for one reason or another, or you get called back out on the job, whatever the reason is, it's stored right here in your tablet along with your MapQuest that you actually use through your hotspot. Most of your mobile phones will have a hotspot on your smartphone. Now, you guys know in our tech support, we use smartphones a lot because it's easier for me to actually see what, they'll take a digital picture of whatever lock it is, text it to me, and so forth. But they're big also in Vegas about talking on your phone when you're in your van. I wanted to show you 2 different devices, or 3 actually, that I've gone through till I finally settled in on this puppy right here. This unit here, well, let's start here. This one right here, I actually purchased. It goes up on your sun visor. Did not work very well. It was kind of hard to hear. So then I went to this one, which was Motorola, and I figured, well, I would put it right here as well. It didn't work quite as well either. Few bucks more, maybe $30 more. This little unit right here is excellent. I mean, it'll hang the phone up. You can mute your phone when you're in your van. But the best way to do it is to Velcro that puppy right there on your steering wheel. That way you're not fumbling around trying to find. If I need to answer my phone, I just push it right here and answer the phone. If I need to hang up, I can actually push this button on the top of here and say, call Tracy at home, or call Austin mobile. And it'll call my son, or whatever the case might be. But this is kind of the way that I do it. It works really well. Now, this particular van is one of our newest vans. And we have a new video coming out in addition to the one that's already in the course of the other van. But this one here was done just recently, and the way the back end was done is really, really nice. And that video will be coming out pretty soon. But listen, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. And we're whoops, there we go. Hang on just a second.
530.
Okay, well, I guess I'm back. Phone rings constantly. But anyways, we're getting ready to go. I'm going to go run these calls, and when I get done running these, I'm actually going to go back to the shop, and we're going to talk about the questions that Gene had and the other fella on the Easy Set. And it's going to be easier for me to actually show you in the shop rather than try to describe it to you on this podcast. So, see you in just a little bit. All right, so we're back here in the shop, and I thought answering Gene's emails would be easier done here at the workbench than it would be trying to do it sitting in the front of my van. So the question was, do I begin the art of impressioning, which he's taken our course, the art of impressioning, do I begin it with a flat file? What that means is this. Let me actually do this. I got these two keys here that actually fit this cam lock. So what I'm going to do is take this key blank, and I'm actually going to do what's called dressing it. Now in our course, and the art of impressioning, you actually see close-ups of this, so I'm not going to actually go into too much of that. I'm going to explain why it's better to begin with the process of a flat file as opposed to a knife edge. What he means by knife edge is taking this key blank and filing the end of the edge of this key down into an actual knife edge. To begin to file it. So I'm actually going to do this on these two keys so you can, and then we're going to look at the keys up close, and I'm going to explain to you why using a flat edge is really the best way to go. So we're going to go to the right, putting a little bit of pressure on the key. You don't want to put a lot of it, you just want to put just a little bit of pressure, not enough to give yourself blisters, right? You want to turn it to the right, and you just want to shake it up and down like this. You want to feel those pins moving up and down. And then you want to turn it to the left, and you want to do exactly the same thing. Okay? So now we're going to take this is the knife edge key blank, and we're going to set it right here actually. And we're going to take this one and just do a simple flat file on this particular lock. And we're just going to do a flat file. Just do a flat, flat, flat key blank. We're going to stick this in. We're going to do exactly the same thing. Actually, I should really put this in the other way. You know, you're kind of you get a certain way of doing something, and when you reverse it, it kind of doesn't work the same way. So I'm going to stick this in here and put a little bit of pressure on this, not a whole lot. And we're going to shake it up and down just like we did the other key. Now keep in mind, this is the flat and the other was the knife edge. And we're going to take this out and we're going to take this key blank and we're going to set it right here. In a second we're going to look at it up close. But right now let's go ahead and go over to our workbench. Alright, so what we have here is a diagram. Let me kind of explain the diagram to you so it's not too confusing. This is actually the plug that was in the lock that we just impressioned. These are the pins, and this is the keyhole. So there's your wafers that are up inside this lock right here. This is the plug housing, and there's your keyhole. What we were talking about was dressing the key. There is actually several ways that you can dress a key. You can either do a knife edge like this, which is where you're taking the key blank and you're actually doing a knife edge. And you can also do it in a flat edge like this, or you could do it, now that I've seen it done this way, I've seen guys do this before, you can do it off to the left like that, or you could do your key off to the right like that. What you're trying to do is to put this lock, now let's look at a lock itself. I want you to watch this lock, the way it moves when I insert this key. Now this is actually the key that actually fits this lock, but I'm not going to put it in all the way. I'm just going to stick it in a little way so it'll actually put these pins in a bind as though that was not the right, that was a blank key. When I hold this cam and the housing of this lock still, I want you to notice how much play there is in that key blank. Do you see the play that's in that key blank? There is quite a bit. All right, so what's going on inside that keyhole is this. Let's start with the knife edge. If you were to take your first key and put it in as a knife edge, now this is not quantum physics, guys. This is just plain common sense. When you turn the key, you're turning it like that. So see, that key's going to be moving like that in that key blank. Notice where that point is pointing. It's pointing dead center of the wafers. Now, without getting into the physics of this whole business, what's happening is when you twist this key blank, the key, when you twist it, you're putting this in a bind with the housing of the lock and the plug, and it puts these wafers in a bind and causes them where they won't move. The greatest pressure on here is here and here. These 2 points are the greatest pressure. So if I were to turn this, like I'm going to show you these key blanks in a second, and I moved it up and down, I'm trying to get that to make a mark, right? So if I do the flat file, put the key in there like that, number one, I haven't degraded the key blank by cutting off half of its shoulders. I've left the key blank completely straight. When I put this in a bind like that and I move it up and down, it's going to mark an enormous amount here and an enormous amount over here whenever you impression it. And you're going to be able to read the marks a whole lot better. Now let's take a close-up view of these two key blanks that we just impressioned. Okay, I want to take a really close look at, this is the key that was done with the knife edge. One thing in reading the marks on a key is you want the light to kind of bounce off the mark that's on the key, because you're looking at this through a magnifying glass. Now the problem that you have with the knife edge is you've got a glare from the right side of the key and you got a glare from the left. Did you see those two marks as I turned the key? Do you see those two marks right there? There's the two impressions for the two cuts that are actually in that lock. But let's look at this other key blank here, and we're going to pull it up really close where you can look at it. This is the flat file. Now keep in mind you're trying to get the light to bounce off of this, and you can see those marks as clear as the nose on your face. You've just got that one reflection that you have to deal with. You're not dealing with two different sides, and you're going to notice these really mark extremely well when you do a flat file. See? There you go. I would much rather have to deal with this in an office building than try to deal with a knife edge that is going to reflect in 1,000 different directions. You've got both sides of this key causing a reflection off the key. So, which would you rather have to deal with in an office building? There you go. So Gene, in answer to your question why someone would tell you to do a knife edge as opposed to a flat file, my only explanation would be, after having watched the video, would be lack of experience. Actually, the guy said to wear welder's gloves. Are you kidding me? You are kidding me, right? Welder's gloves to impression. You want to be able to put a little bit of pressure on there, enough to put those wafers in a bind, but not enough to bend them, and certainly not enough to cause blisters on your little hands. So, let's go on to the next podcast question, and that was regarding an easy set. Okay, this is the easy set lock that I was talking to you about, that this fella called me on. The problem that he had was this rose right here. If you'll notice how you get this knob off of here, and I'm going to take this off in a second so you can see it, but notice in this hole right here, when I turn it, you're going to see it change to a dark color. It's hard to see, I know, on camera, but you stick an ice pick in there and you push in on that retainer pin and this knob will come off, and that's the way that you actually rekey it. But what had happened is somebody, when they put this lock back on here, had actually twisted this rose, because it will twist. If it has a dimple in it, it's supposed to keep it in place, but that's not always the case. So anyways, this hole was actually over here, so he's pushing around in here trying to find that retainer pin, and he wasn't able to find it. Well, the reason is because this rose had been twisted over to the right hand side. So it was kind of a challenge for him to get it off. I told him to take it off the door, take the lock off the door. In a second we're going to do that. Take the lock off of the door and move this rose back around where it's supposed to be, and then he could get the handle off. And then he had another problem once he got it off, and we're going to show you that here in just a second. Alright, so what I've done is I've taken this actually off of the stand that it was on. But as I'm going to pull this up close where you can see this. Do you see that hole? Now watch that pin when it comes around. You see that right there? That is the retainer clip that actually holds this ball knob on. Now what had happened was this rose has several little dimples in it. One is right there and the other one's on the opposite side. And this rose will, if I were to, I'm not going to do it to this lock, but what happens usually, somebody's trying to get this lock off the door and they'll stick a screwdriver in there. Let me pull a screwdriver out here. They'll take a screwdriver and they'll start to pry on this and they'll pop this rose off of here. They'll pop that rose off and then they'll just stick it back on there, and then consequently this hole now, instead of being there, because see, unless this lock is unlocked, you're not going to be able to push that in and take the handle off. So they actually pop this back on and that thing ends up being over here. Now the guy can't, you know, the lock just won't go around that far to where he can actually get to this retainer pin. And that's what happened to this fellow that I helped on the phone, was this rose had twisted over the side. Another thing that happened, this really isn't funny, but it's happened to me before, so I wanted to share it with you. Let's look at the inside of this. So he's pulled the knob off like this in his hand. It's come off in his hand. And let me just take it apart, then I'll explain what happened. You pull this cover off right here. This cover just comes off. As you know, if you've taken my course, we've already showed you this. But pull the plug out of here like this. And the parts that you don't want to lose is this right here. So what happened to him was he's pulling on the knob, frustrated, trying to get it off, and this little puppy went underneath the washing machine. And when he got the knob off, he didn't follow the instructions that's in our course, and he didn't have a key blank in there like that when he pulled the knob off. And so consequently what happened was this lock went in here and went sideways. It went in there like that. So he called me on the phone. He said, I don't know, man. He said, I can't seem to get that lock out of there. Try to describe this to a guy on the phone. So this is why I did this podcast, so you guys can see that. If that ever happens to you, all you really need to do is to take this and turn it, and it's not easy to do either. Take it and turn it around, and then stick the slot of your screwdriver. You can do it from either side, really. What you want to do, you know what you want to do. You want to get it where it's turned in the right direction. And getting it like that can be a real challenge. What I will usually do is take a pick, a lock pick, and stick it in the keyhole like this to where you can get something a hold of it like that. And then you can just kind of move your knob around to where you can get going in the right direction. And you will usually be able to just get it where it'll fall out of there. But once that gets turned sideways in there, you got a big problem. So there you go. And it's going to come out right now. There she is, like a newborn baby. So that's the plug. You don't want to get that turned sideways in there because it's going to be a real challenge to get it out. Next thing he goes, now he's going to put the knob back on. And I says, well, is there that small brass cap that was on the back of it? Where is it? And he goes, ain't no small brass cap on the back. So he went digging around. Anyways, he found this on the underneath the washing machine, which has happened to me years ago, but when the first time you ever saw one of these. They're relatively cheap locks. They're probably about the cheapest thing you can buy. They do have a good brass plug in there. That is one thing that, I don't know why they made such a crummy lock and then put a really nice plug in there. The tolerance on these are very, very close. And you can use a quick set key. You don't need to find an easy set key blank, which we talk about in our course. So you just take it and just pop it right back on there. And there you go. And if you've keyed it, she's done the way it should be. Well, listen, I want to thank you for watching this podcast, and stay tuned for the next one.